I'm frozen. Well, that stinks. Testing, testing, 1, 2. You might have a frozen image of me. I'm just going to cut over to a blank slide for a second. Hang on 1 second. I'm just going to move over to the main panel over here, and I'm still frozen. All right, hang on 1 second, folks. Sorry about the technical difficulties. We will get right up and running momentarily. We are having technical difficulties. Please stand by. Let me actually cut over to the other camera. 1 second. All right, there we go. I got my image and everything. Good evening. Pardon the technical difficulty. Before we start tonight's program, this is a reminder that this episode will address various topics related to addiction and my health journey. And we'll have a reminder about multiple sclerosis. These may be sensitive to some of our viewers. Viewer discretion, as always, is advised. We remind you to please consult your doctor, your mental health professional, your outreach group, your sponsor, or specialist before adopting any change to your dietary, physical, and or mental health regime. If you're looking for options with respect to mental health, contact SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, at 1-800-662-HELP. That's 1-800-662-4357. The service is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and is a confidential free information service for individuals and family members facing such stressors. This part of the disclaimer is now new, so if you're feeling suicidal crisis or emotional distress and need to be put in touch with a crisis center, call or text the Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 988. Once again, 988. Or go to 988lifeline.org. Those resources are also available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Remember, you're not alone, and you don't have to go through this alone. You are worth it. And before we go on to our pre-roll, just a reminder about something that has been prevalent in my mind and heart over the last 21, 22 months, but quite frankly, the last 11 years, in that of multiple sclerosis. The National MS Society is a collective of passionate individuals who want to do something about MS now, to move together towards a world free of multiple sclerosis. Multiple sclerosis is comprised of unpredictable and often disabling flare-ups of the central nervous system. Such flare-ups disrupt the flow of information within the brain and between the brain and the body. The National MS Society is the largest private funder of MS researchers in the world, investing more than $1 billion to date. MS stops people from moving, but the National MS Society exists to make sure that MS doesn't. To contact the National MS Society, please call 1-800-344-4867. Once again, 1-800-344-4867. Or go to their website at nationalmssociety.org. Importantly, we are still raising money for the National MS Society through a Venture to a Cure. This was the fundraising page in conjunction with the Walk MS event that was done earlier this year. The fundraising page for A Venture to a Cure is at rebrand.ly/A Venture to a Cure. Once again, rebrand.ly/A Venture to a Cure. This effort will exist through September 30th. Thank you. Thank you to all of you who have gone to the National MS Society to learn about multiple sclerosis and demyelination, or even gone to the National MS Society to make a donation. Myself and over the 1 million people in this country who have multiple sclerosis are very thankful, and we appreciate all of you. And on that, let's begin. When this year began, I had the idea that I wanted to carry out the plan I wanted to carry out back last year and back into 20 before, the Backstreet Boys reunion tour took place. That joke never gets old, does it? Anyhow, this year I've made a focus on running. And 31 days from now, I'll be running the Portland Marathon on October 2nd. So I'm looking forward to that, and I've trained for it So needless to say, I'm excited, but I'm also scared. We'll talk about what I've done this year as far as planning for this, training for this, and also how I got this piece of metal from back in March when I ran my first half marathon. Well, in October, I'm going to run my first marathon. We'll talk about all of that. We'll talk about how that fits into the total picture. And I'll take your questions and comments because this is the Venture Forward. Good evening, or good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you may be, and welcome to the Venture Forward. I am John Venturini, a recovering addict of overeating, obesity, alcoholism, and compulsive gambling, and it is an honor and pleasure to see all of you tonight on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter on this very first night of September 2022. Hope everybody's doing well. It has been a story, hasn't it? You have this person who used to be morbidly obese at 480 pounds, and now he's running. He's not only running, but he's working out, and he's taken a total 180 on his health, both mentally and physically. That's what this show is about. It's about making a venture forward, about moving past our addictions, moving past our codependencies, moving past everything that held us back for so long. And it's an honor to see all of you tonight. Let's see who is on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter tonight to see who wins the door prize. And that is going to go to Jamie on YouTube who says, hey, good to see you again. Haha. Good to see you, Jamie. Hope you're doing well this evening. We got Marilyn on YouTube with 3 waves and 3 purple hearts and says, hi, JV. Hi, Marilyn. Hope you are doing well this evening as well. We also have Jaden on YouTube who says hello. And he has his purple heart and some beautiful flower next to his handle. And it's good to see you this evening. And we also have Awesome Wood Things, otherwise known as the co-host of VF Talks on Friday nights. That would be Matt Haas, who says, hey. And Matt, I say, hey to you. Good to see all of you. So, not sure if you heard about this, but I'm running a marathon in 31 days. And some people are saying, John, what have you trained for a marathon? Have you been training for a marathon all your life? No. I've been training this year. I've been basically focusing in on the last 6 months as far as this marathon on October 2nd. I've also been focusing on the time about the 2 to 3 months before Cary as far as the half marathon back in March. So it's been basically part of the MO this year. And we'll talk exactly about what races I've done and what races I've signed up for the rest of this year with a little bit of a preview of what we're doing next year. Because there are plans for next year and there are plans for 24 as well. So we'll talk about all of that in moments. Gotta get Matt's comment up real quick. He says 20-minute half miles. Yes, that would be the Matt Haas way. And I think about that as I run, and I realize progress, not perfection. I'm okay with a 12-minute mile. I'm okay with even a 13. A 40-minute mile, I'd probably be disqualified. But still, I look up to you. So definitely something to keep front of mind, of course. But nevertheless, this is the situation that's up ahead. And I've been wanting to do this for a long time. In fact, if we turn back the clock a year ago, I was in Los Angeles and Portland for Vid Summit, but also to see some friends. And when I was in Portland and Vancouver, I was absolutely inspired by the area. Now, not only the fact that I have friends in the Portland, Oregon, and Vancouver, Washington area, but the scenery for the marathon is absolutely picturesque, and it is a very hilly course. I'm very fully aware, and we'll talk about exactly what that course looks like in mere minutes. But if there was anything I was going to do to start running marathons, I was going to go to Portland to do this. Now, could I have gone to do a marathon down in the Southeast? Sure. Could I have done a marathon in the Keystone State up here in the Mid-Atlantic Northeast? Absolutely. But there is a message. There is a reason why I'm running the Portland Marathon. And it is because of the incredible people I know in the Pacific Northwest. I am doing this because I want to run in a place where I feel most at home and where I feel like this is a place I want to be. And whatever place you want to be, you're going to run 26.2 miles in. So that's why the Portland Marathon is my first marathon. Or is it? And we'll talk about that in minutes. But let's talk about what we're going to cover on tonight's show. In the sense that we're going to go through The Language of Letting Go, our friend Melody Beatty, in that wonderful book. And we're going to talk about patience, which really has a huge message to tonight's story. We're going to talk about my newfound fascination with running. We're going to spend some time talking about why a marathon is 26.2 miles. There have been a lot of people that have asked me, hey, you're running a marathon. How long is that? 26.2 miles. And then they're always asking, why 26.2? Why not 26? Why not 25? Why not 30? There's a story behind that, and we'll talk about that as well. Training for the marathon has been entirely different than what I did prior to the half marathon in Cary. There have been some lessons learned, and we're going to talk about what that sort of training difference is and how the body and the mind gets ready for a longer challenge, which is more than just double the effort. It actually grows, not necessarily exponential, but it's definitely more than a double effort when we're talking about a 26.2 mile challenge. We're going to go through that one important tip that is apropos for October 2nd and what I'm looking to accomplish in the running of the 2022 Portland Marathon. Then I'm going to share a poem I wrote to. I'm going to share a poem I wrote. from the top. I'm going to share a poem I wrote today with all of you about this sort of, I guess, over sensing of emotion that I'm going through right now and getting ready for this marathon. I couldn't even get that segue out correctly, but I am so excited. And yet, as I said in the pre-roll, I'm scared. And we'll talk about why I'm scared too. And then we'll preview what we're going to be talking about on the next episode of The Venture, which will be on Tuesday night. We've talked about codependency before, but we're going to talk about stoicism and how the two may actually be related. So that's tonight's show. And as always, if you have questions and comments, we'll be taking them as we move along. But let's start with the language of letting go. Language of Letting Go, for people that are new to the show, is an incredible book that is written based on journal entries and books that Melody Beattie wrote about codependency. And we try to cite a lot of passages from Language of Letting Go in conjunction with this show. And today's entry is no exception to that. You'll see that it has a lot to do with today's story. Language of Letting Go for September 1st has to do with patience. Sometimes we get what we want right away. At other times, we wonder if our desires will ever be fulfilled. We will be fulfilled in the best way possible and as quickly as possible. But some things take time. Sometimes we have lessons to learn first, lessons that prepare us so we can accept the good we deserve. Things are being worked out for us and in others. Blocks in us are being removed, and a solid foundation is being laid. Be patient, relax, and trust. Let go. Then after that, let go some more. Realize that good things are planned for us. We will receive them at the first available moment. We will have all our heart longs for, all of it, every single facet of that. Relax and trust. Today, I will identify what I need and want. Then, I'll be willing to let go of it. I will devote my energy to living my life today, so I may master my lessons as quickly as possible. I will trust that what I want and need is absolutely coming to me. I will let go of my need to control the details. And that is the language of letting go. And go back to Maine for a second, because there are a couple of comments that popped up as I was reading today's entry of Language of Letting Go. Jamie says it's okay to be scared. Yeah, I don't think, if I wasn't scared, I don't think I'd be living this experience fully. So, for sure. And then Matt says, as far as Tuesday night's topic, Stoicism, very interested in the topic. He's been digging into that recently. So we will definitely be talking about that. And to Jamie's point, it was definitely a great language of letting go for today. For sure. We have to be patient. That's the only way we get anywhere in life. I mean, if we think about the story, if we think about me running races, me trying to take this sort of newfound commitment to my physical and mental health, it requires a ton of patience. I'm not going to drop 300 pounds in a day. I don't think anyone can. I don't think I could drop even 300 pounds in a year. It took me 3.5. Well, less than. But still, it took time. And as far as the mental sort of resources that go behind all of that, that's an ongoing journey. That's an ongoing journey through self-help. That's an ongoing journey through meditation. That's an ongoing journey through journaling. All of that. It is an absolute ultimate test in patience. So, nevertheless, let's talk about what exactly is going on. What happened this year as far as me trying to prepare for my first marathon. So we go back to March 26, 2022, when I ran my first half marathon. It was a wonderful race in the middle of the Greenways up in Cary, North Carolina, Metro Park, actually. Chilly morning. It was 35 degrees. And I asked to get an early start because I didn't know if I was going to finish this thing in 3 or 4 hours. So I asked to be let out first. And there was a pack of 20, 25 that joined me. And we all ran it. We all started running. We actually had a 30 minute to an hour head start upon the rest of the pack, which it wasn't a large field. It was 250, 300 runners. But nevertheless, it helped considerably. And I got through it because the goal for March 26 is actually the goal for October 2nd. Just finish the race. When prior to that point have I ever run a half marathon? The answer to that is never. When prior to October 2nd will I have run a marathon? The answer to that is never, kind of. We'll get to that story. Don't worry. We'll get there. But the point for me is I just want to finish the darn thing because I never had the chance to do that sort of thing. I never had the chance to run 13.1 miles, 26.2 miles, what have you. So for me, that was the test. It wasn't me trying to break it in 2 hours for a half marathon or 2.5 hours for a half marathon. It wasn't a question of me trying to break it in 5.5 or 5 hours for a marathon. It was a question of just merely finishing. That's the goal. That's what I'm trying to do. When we go to April, I did a 5K walk for the Walk MS. And when we go to June, I did a run, which is being held right outside my gym, a 5K for Chrissy's Run for Hope. So there was a 5K done, there was a half marathon done. So the only two that are left is a marathon and a 10K run, 10K race. Now, I've done a 10K virtual race on my treadmill, but does that really count? Not really. So there are two more items on this list of relative importance. One, the thing we've been talking about for the last 15 minutes in the sense that there is the Portland Marathon on October 2nd. It's basically what I've been gearing up for the last 5 to 6 months. And then there is a 10K trail run on November 5th in the Lehigh Valley, the Lehigh Gap Nature Center 10K trail run. And at that point, all four pieces will have been filled. 5K, 10K, half marathon, full marathon, with plans to go well beyond that for next year, running a lot more races. Because as I'm doing this, I'm finding myself a bit faster, finding myself getting a bit of momentum, finding myself more and more fit, finding myself more and more physically able to, building a lot more muscle. That's thanks to the work at the gym and my trainers and whatnot. Very thankful to all of you. But I feel like I'm at a point right now that I'm ready to take the next step. And there is definitely a next step. And we'll talk about that, but we're going to go through your comments first. We have Jamie on YouTube who says, your patience is paid off. Can't run a 13K with 1 day of training. Your discipline is excellent. Thank you, Jamie. Muchly appreciated. We have April over on YouTube who says, definitely okay to be scared, but you got this with a kiss. And she says, hashtag beast mode. I think more like a phoenix mode now. I am flying and I'm ready for the next thing. Thank you for saying that, April. Muchly appreciated. Kiss right back at you. Jamie says, I've been training for a Spartan race I have next weekend, and it's rough. Jamie, let us know in the comments what you've been doing for that Spartan race preparation. I'm very interested in that because truth be told, that'll probably be my next step in the journey. I got the 5K, 10K, half and whole. Definitely I'm looking at other races and other things to do. Jamie also says, more power to you, JV, for running. Been running more, and that stuff is hard on my joints. Ice and stretching for sure. We call it RICE, right? Rest, ice, compression, elevation. I've heard that more times than not. And if someone says, hey, you should use a foam roller, don't worry. I got a foam roller right by my bed. I use it all the time. I actually use a foam roller sometimes when I can see at the gym. I try to do that too. But rest, ice, compression, elevation helps more times than not. Jamie also says, but it does feel good to see the gains in endurance and strength, without a doubt. And I think, if not for anything else, looking at previous pictures of where I was a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and knowing how far I've come, has been more and more the motivation than anything. That's why I hold on to it. That's why I look at that. That's why there's a board over there to know what my realization has been, what I've accomplished, but moreover, what I have been doing to move forward. Thank you for saying that, Jamie. On Facebook, we have Maureen who says, Hi, Maureen. Hope you're doing well this evening. Jamie also says she's been weight training and running. A friend and her has been going to a personal trainer for circuit training that mimics the obstacles for the course, as well as, and she continues, watching body form to prevent injury. There's a lot to be said about boot camp. There's a lot to be said about high intensity interval training and classes like that. That has been part of my MO of recent edition. I do a boot camp now on Fridays, and it has done wonders for me. Not to mention that the person that runs the boot camp is the same person I train with. So I kind of know her form and function. I know to a certain degree what she'll use in boot camp because I saw it earlier in the week, whether it's just strength training or doing high interval or high intensity interval training with her as well. Jamie also says, and hiking like crazy, trying to trail run, and personal trainers push you more than when I'm alone. So I like it. Yeah, a trainer, whether you're talking about trainers that are certified or trainers that are basically, more trainers more than not are certified. I'll say that. MASM, CASM, whatnot. They are definitely certified to do exactly that. But more than just tell you exactly what sort of exercises apropos, what sort of training regimens apropos. It's also to talk about the mind-body connection, talk about the things that are going on behind the scenes as far as stressors and that sort of thing. That's why trainers are very valuable. And I'm very thankful for the trainers I've had over the last year and a half, 2 years. And certainly I'm going to be leaning on them more and more as we go forward. So that is basically what I'm shooting for. There are some inspirations. We've talked about this previously on the show, but let me go there for a second. And there's an addition to that. My cousin Ian, who is there in the lower right-hand corner of this slide, is a picture of young John sitting next to young Ian. I think I was like 7 or 8 in that picture, and I think he had to have been 6 or 7. He has been an inspiration and then some. He has run a handful, I think 7 or 8 New York City marathons. And he went from a world of not running to a world where he's racing towards Central Park, crossing the 59th Street Bridge, and gunning it. Now, granted, it is not the fastest, but he's just going out there to finish, which is exactly the same strategy I had for Portland on October 2nd. He's also helped me at a time where I was far away and was absolutely incredible with respect to my dad. I will always have the utmost respect and love for my cousin Ian. And needless to say, as I start running and continue running, Ian is definitely, without question, an inspiration. The second inspiration would be my dearest friend Rebecca. Half marathon, we put Rebecca in air quotes because that is not her name. We change names around here to protect the innocent, I guess. But Rebecca has been definitely inspiration in the sense that she has gotten great joy from half marathons. That is the distance of her choice. She went from a point where she wasn't doing much of a running sort of deal, and then she started gravitating to half marathons and growing closer and closer to marathons. That, in addition to the fact that she has a lot of different interests in life. She's an incredible author. She's an incredible purveyor of numbers, an incredible baker, and yes, an incredible friend without question. She has taught me how much of a requisite adrenaline rush running actually is. I love her dearly as well, as much as I love my cousin Ian. I've mentioned these two people before. They stand on the top of my mind as I run races, whether it's the question of the half marathon in Cary or the full marathon in Portland or other races in between. They are top of mind for me. A third name that we haven't talked about before, Patrick Phinney. The thing about Patrick Phinney is this. Here's a man who has been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and he did not let multiple sclerosis stop him. He has run marathons in most of the 50 states upon the diagnosis of MS, and he continues to run today. He is an inspiration to us all, especially those who have suffered from demyelination, those that have suffered with multiple sclerosis, as I have, and continue to. But basically, just a great sort of story. He is a great benefactor, a great philanthropist, but he always gives back to his community and continues to run. Because as anyone with MS will tell you, if you don't use it, you lose it. So you wonder why I'm running, why I want to run 26.2 miles, 13.1, what have you. If you don't use it, you lose it. So that's the reason why I'm doing all of this. Some comments as I was going through my inspirations. We have on Facebook, Des joining us from Australia, who says, good morning, everyone, with 3 cups of coffee. 3 cups of coffee back at you, Des. I am doing well. Hope you are doing well. Jamie's laughing at the picture of baby JV with baby Ian in the inspiration slide. Yeah, my cousin Ian's a trip. Love him. And Jamie also says, do you have tips for preventing muscle cramps when running? I'm thinking maybe I want hydrated enough prior to run. Yes, hydration is very important. I will say you want to make sure you're getting a close look at your electrolyte coverage, how much salt you're taking in. But I will also say this, which sounds like really you're saying something controversial. You're talking low carb and keto and whatnot. Gotta tell you, if you're going to run 10, 15, 20 miles, you gotta take a look at your potassium. And yes, there was a reason why I was holding a banana on the second half of the half marathon in Cary, because bananas have become part of my diet when I get to long run days. It is a very large treasure trove of potassium, so I don't cramp, so I don't get Charlie horses. So that would be my strategy. Gotta watch your electrolytes, gotta watch your salt coverage, gotta watch your hydration, but you can't forget about potassium. And this is, I'm sure you take care of this already, Jamie, but make sure you're taking multivitamins and you're taking your supplements and whatnot, so you're staying well leveled as far as all the physical activity you're doing in preparation for the Spartan race, but also for anything else. To stay hydrated and to take your vitamins and stay on top of that sort of thing is the most very important thing you could do. And at some point, we'll have a fuller discussion about supplements and dietary guidance. It's been a while since we've done that, but we will do that again soon, for sure, as we get into season 5. Jamie also says, okay, I will eat some bananas. I got the salt covered, but did not remember the potassium. Thank you for the advice. Much obliged. Anytime. And as I will remind everybody, I am not a doctor, not a nutritionist, not a therapist, not any of the sort. This is someone who has lived this life over and over and over again, who goes to plenty of doctors, who gets plenty of advice. But as we always say, if you have any questions, always consult your doctor, your mental health professional, your outreach group, so on and so forth. That is the best place to go. Okay. Always have to give that disclaimer, as April sends an emoji of a banana. Yeah. Okay. So quick story. I actually got the banana at the turnaround table for her. I ended up not eating that banana. That was for April. So take that for what you will. Did I put any pictures of that banana in the slide deck? No, I didn't. Could I do that on tomorrow's VF Talks? It probably will, because you'll probably be asking for it. So, so I run this half marathon in Cary. What does that look like? Well, it looks like, oh, it's the wrong slide. Right slide. There we go. I go from someone who used to be 480 pounds, who is sitting right by the Raleigh Convention Center back in 2019. That's the picture on the left. To someone who actually finished a 13.1 mile half marathon and has a wonderful reminder of that, but also a story to tell for the rest of his life as he wants to build upon that. And he turned into someone who is healthy, someone that actually has a chance to do something with his life. That's why we're doing this. That's why I'm doing this. I don't want to be the person on the left. I want to be the person on the right. I want to be the person who runs races. I want to be the person that does anything and everything in this life. You know, because you only get one life, and the only moment you have right now is now. You don't have yesterday. You can have the memories of yesterday, but we're not supposed to dwell upon that. And you don't have tomorrow. That's not a guarantee. We have this moment right now, and better focus on the camera. This moment right now. That's the thing that holds us together. So we go back to me for a second. April says she is such a lucky lady. It was really fun running that half marathon and really carrying a banana for 6 six and a half miles, 6 2/3 miles for you. So there you go. Anytime, I'll do that. Anyone needs a banana, just let me know. I'll be at the turnaround table somewhere along the morning of October 2nd. I'll grab you a banana. I'll be just carrying all these bananas. I'll be running all over the place. It'll be great. And then Jamie's quoting her Gwen Stefani, Bananas. This is bananas, Bananas, indeed. So let's take a reminder of what that looks like. The half marathon in Cary was a turnaround. So you go out to 1 point, 6.5 miles out, 6.55 miles out, and you turn around and you head back. That's being held at the Fred Metro Park in Cary, North Carolina. A beautiful course, couple of bridges, just a beautiful place to run a race. And it wasn't, I will say this, it is the total antithesis of what I'll be dealing with on October 2nd. Not a large crowd, going through neighborhoods. This is going to be completely different. This is going to be running through neighborhoods, running through bridges, running over bridges rather, into neighborhoods and whatnot. Having many people cheering you on. It's going to feel completely different, and I am absolutely excited. But yeah, I'm still a little scared. This is a little bit different than what I know. So needless to say, the anticipation and the fear of the unknown, but also the realization that I can absolutely do this. They're both just locking heads up here, and I'm just doing the best I can for sure. We were talking before about the preparation of a half marathon versus that of a marathon. This is not any sort of scientific chart here, but it is within the ballpark. Is it towards scale? Maybe. Use your imagination. But it's not a 1-for-1 increase. Granted, the difference between a half marathon and a marathon. A half marathon is a 13.1 mile race. A full marathon is 26.2 miles. But what happens when you get past the 13.1 mile mark? You're still really tired. And chances are you're getting more and more tired as you're running the second half of a marathon. So needless to say, your exertion level is growing and growing and growing. So one can say, well, I ran a half marathon in 2 hours. Granted, I'll run a marathon in 4 hours. And that's not necessarily true. It's going to be more like 4.5. Might be more like 5. It depends on how your body handles miles 13 through 26. That's going to be the question. How does your body do that? And preparing yourself for those long runs. And that becomes part of the training structure. And we'll get to that in a minute. That's why we do runs of whole different kinds of varieties and speeds and distances when preparing for a marathon versus that of a half marathon versus that of a 10K versus that of a 5K. It's a different animal altogether. Sort of like how people would train for an ultramarathon. But usually the people that train for an ultramarathon know exactly how long a marathon goes. So they've taken the 26.2 mile challenge. They say, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to go 40. I'm ready to go 50 miles. I'm ready to go this. I'm ready to go that. There's a difference. So that's why there's a sort of difference in that exertion curve for sure. There we go. So one of the questions I keep on getting asked is, why is a marathon 26.2 miles? And there is a story to that. The length of the Olympic marathon, when the modern marathon, post 1896, was originally 25 miles, 40 kilometers. You know, basically the distance between Marathon to Athens, but, you know, basically an honored homage to that in the 1896 Athens Olympics. But they would make tweaks and ties to each of the routes in the preceding or the following Olympics, 1900, 1904, so on and so forth. But it was always that sort of rudimentary 25, 27, 25. And then the organizers said, okay, we're going to make this a 26-mile race. And then the 1908 London Games took place. And something interesting happened in the sense that the organizers decided that the course of 26 miles from the start of Windsor Castle to the royal entrance of the White City Stadium, followed by a lap, so 586 yards, 2 feet, 536 meters, in other words, should finish in front of the royal box. The course was then later altered to use a different entrance to the stadium, followed by another lap of 385 yards to the same finish, resulting in 26.2 miles. After that, the race distances still varied from as far as 24.85 miles to that of 26.56 miles. In 1924, the International Olympics Committee and the IAAF, the International Amateur Athletic Foundation, basically said, okay, enough's enough. We need to have a standardized length. We're going to keep it in honor of the London Games, and we're going to make all marathons 26.2 miles. And from that point forward, every Olympic marathon has been 26.2 miles, plus or minus a very small delta, 26.2 miles, which also means that the IAAF looks at the half marathon distance as, you guessed it, 13.1 miles. So everything is based on that 26.2 rubric. That's why a marathon's 26.2. So when people say, hey, you're running a marathon, how long is that? Well, it's 26.2 miles. The funny thing is, you'll know someone has run a marathon with their bumper sticker because they'll have bumper stickers in the back of their car that have 26.2 on it. If they run a half marathon, they'll have a 13.1 bumper sticker. They'll have the Ironman distances, 70.1, 140.2 on the back of their car. So you'll know that someone has run a marathon or a half marathon or what have you. As Jamie says, 26.2. Yes, indeed. 26.2, 13.1, and then we talk about the 10K being 6.2 and the 5K being 3.1. Because if anyone's run 10Ks and 5Ks, you get used to that sort of 5K, 10K formation really quickly. So the training that's needed, I'm going to go back to Maine for a second. The training that is needed for a marathon is a lot different than the training that was used for the half marathon, in the sense that we have to do something that prepares us for these longer and longer and longer runs. And I was using Marathon Handbook in the beginning of my Portland Marathon training, and then I moved to someone by the name of Hal Higdon, who ends up being one of the better aficionados as far as any sort of couch to 5K, couch to 10K, couch to marathon sort of program out there. He has an incredibly great app on iOS, Android called Run with Hal. I definitely recommend taking a look at it because his program, his algorithm will basically figure out what goal are you trying to shoot for the race, and then accordingly prep your runs, 3 to 5 runs a week. So let's take a look at what that looks like. Before we do that, Jamie says, she'll need a 3.1 sticker after the Spartan race. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing how your Spartan goes. I'm rooting you on without question. You're definitely an inspiration, and I hope you get everything you want out of that race. I'm looking up to you for sure. So, what does the training look like? And I apologize if this looks like an eye chart for a second. You're looking at basically the Run with Hal calendar for the last 3 months. And there has been basically the same sort of MO week over week over week. You have a long run on the weekends, you have 2 pace runs, and then a marathon pace run or drills during the week. The difference between a marathon pace run and a regular pace run, we'll call a pace run sometimes a recovery run, which is not done for speed. It's just done to move your bones and whatnot to get the blood flowing. A marathon pace run is done within a 5 to 10% delta of what your pace should be for the marathon. So it's going to be a faster run than what you do in a recovery run, faster run than what you do for a pace run. The long run is even slower than the pace run that you do for a 5 to 10 mile pace run. The long run can range anywhere between 10 miles to 20 miles. They shouldn't be longer than 20. But then there are some people that say you should do a 22-mile long run before a marathon, whatever the case may be. It's just to prepare your body for the rigors of that extended distance. This training, as I mentioned before, is based on Hal Higdon's program. He runs an application called Run with Hal. Definitely someone you want to look up more information on. This training plan is in addition to spending 3 to 5 times a week. So I spend a lot of time on the bike. I strength train 2.5 to 3 hours a week, and I do boot camp once a week. It's a lot of training. Some of it is considerable strength training. Some of it is non-running aerobic training. And then, of course, the rest of it is aerobic training. All of this work in tandem to make me faster. And I've been noticing my times get faster and faster and faster. For example, I ran a 5-miler this morning that took me 53 minutes, which if I was looking at the same time, say 6 to 12 months ago, you were looking at something that was probably well over an hour 5, hour 10 minutes. So my time is getting faster. I know how to basically gauge my body and run what we call negative splits, meaning in the beginning of a run, we try to run as slowly as we can. Not intentionally slowly, but getting ourselves into the groove of running. We're not trying to gun it right out of the blocks. We're trying to run something that just gets our arms moving and us moving. And then over time, we try to get faster and faster and faster. So we want to get the slowest speed up top and then the fastest speed towards the end. In a marathon, it's more like a parabolic split, right? So you want to have the slow in the beginning. You want to get faster and faster towards the middle. And then in the third quarter of the race, you'll slow up a bit. And then you're just saving up a little bit of energy so you can hit it at the end. Over a 26.2 mile run, you're going to have a lot of time to do that. Whether it's a question of being able to run that marathon in 4 hours or 6 hours or what have you, you will have a lot of time to figure out exactly when to turn the afterburners on and when not to. So that's why we do that. In addition to, if you've done a long run of 20 miles, 22 miles, you know what you feel like during the 20 miles. You know about the wall that you hit as you get to mile 13, mile 15, mile 17, whatnot. And then what you need to do to overcome that wall, right? It's basically just preparing yourself for it, but then knowing how to work through it. There's always a way through it. You just have to get your mind over the head game and know that you're going to have to be relaxed and swinging your arms at 90 degrees and keeping yourself in a point where you can continue running, or at least continue moving. It could be a jog for all I care. If you have to walk at some point, then you walk, whatever the case may be. I think it goes back to the one last tip that we talked about back in March, back in April. Just finish the race, because I've never run a marathon before. My personal best for a marathon is infinity, but it's not really infinity. Let's just say an accident happened 2 weeks ago. Some people that are watching the program tonight know exactly what I'm about to talk about, but let's talk about this for a second. I am set to do these long runs, 18 miles, 19 miles, 20 miles. The most important thing about running a long run on a trail is to know where your turnaround point is. You should know where your turnaround point is, memorize the turnaround point so you can, turn around. I didn't do that. I didn't do that. It was, I got lost in my own world, and along the Chester Valley Trail on August 14th, I continued running until I saw that sign in the lower left-hand corner that said 0.0. As serendipity would have a funny story in all this, the point where I joined the trail was in Exton, right by a Walmart, at the 13.25 mile mark. So 13.25 times 2 is, 26.5. So I walked an unintentional marathon on August 14th. The reason why I say walk is because I was in bloody pain come the 20th mile, the 21st mile. I might have called a couple people asking, am I still alive? Like, I needed water. I stopped at a Wawa. I drank water. I was just trying to walk and not pass out because the humidity was stepping up and we were getting into the mid-80s that day. So, needless to say, I didn't carry enough water on me, even though I carried 3 to 4 bottles of vitamin water, carried enough protein bars, and a couple bananas. There's the bananas again. And yet, I was still at the point where I was going to be in a very bad place unless I stopped at a Wawa, grabbed a couple of bottles of water, and continued going. The 26.2, and I timed it to 26.2, ended up being 7 hours, 2 minutes, and 56 seconds. Just to keep the level set here, the time I posted in Cary for the half marathon was 2:54:19. Couple of variables to keep in mind. One, a 26.2 mile effort is going to be a lot harder than a 13.1 mile effort, especially on a very humid day, especially on a point where you weren't expecting, to run 26.2 miles. So that's one reason why there's a delta that's well above the double of Cary. The second thing is, I gained a lot of information on that because now my body knows what to do when I get to 23, 24, 25, and 26. So if at all anything, I'm not looking for time. I'm looking for experience. I'm looking for the way the body to react to that 23rd mile, to that 24th mile, to that 25th mile, to that 26th mile. So that muscle memory becomes very important off of a long run for actual runs, for actual races, for marathons, what have you, for Spartans in the case of Jamie. It's a very important thing to realize. That's why we do our training. It's the way the body gets used to it. So the moral of the story is, if you don't have the opportunity to run an unintentional marathon, don't do it. Because I was sore for the next week or so. I had blisters on my left foot, and I had to do exactly that rice sort of rest, ice, compression, elevation. Yeah, I was a little bit hobbly for the next few days, as the people around me fully saw it with their own two eyes and may have snickered and laughed underneath. But yeah, that absolutely happened. So, needless to say, I did run a marathon. It was unintentional, and I had 7:02:56. So, my personal best is 7:02:56. Am I going to look at that come the day of October 2nd? No, because for the sake of this, there is no personal best. I just want to finish the race. I know I could finish the race. I know I could finish 26.2 miles. So I just want to do it in Portland now. On a course that is very hilly, which is something that the Chester Valley Trail wasn't. Let's talk about exactly what I need to watch out for. As I mentioned before, we got to start slow. We slow down. Our negative splits are our friend. We start slow. We build into a comfortable pace. In the run, the run itself should be paced, right? So when we talk about the half marathon, there was a 3-hour time limit. I kept that in the back of my mind. I ended up getting a 2:54:19. For this marathon in Portland, the time limit is 7 hours. So as long as I'm well around the 5 or 6 hour point come mile 24, 23, I know I'm in a good place. The most important thing we cannot do is we can't compare ourselves to others. We win just by being there. Even if we don't finish, we win because we've said, you know what? I'm going to run a marathon today. We won for saying that. We won for getting to the starting gate. We won by getting through the corral and getting to that course and starting to run. We won by just doing that. Running shoes are key. I'm a Saucony sort of guy. Change them like you would change car tires. I just changed mine in preparation for the marathon, and I could tell a difference right away. So I'm not running the busted up pair of running shoes I ran from March. I'm running a new pair of Sauconys, and I feel better than ever. I notice my speed get a little bit faster because I'm not, the shocks and me banging my legs and stuff, not bad at all. Wear the right gear and be prepared for any kind of weather. You could say this slide was from March, but it's October. And the thing about October is, in Portland, it could be a wild card. It could be a very cool day. It could also be very humid. I have to be prepared for both. So whether it was a case of Cary being March or the case of Portland being, or case of October in Portland, we have to be ready for anything. In the case of Portland, it might be a question of rain as well. I have to be ready to run in the rain. And go back to Maine for a second because there was a comment. Jamie says, comparison is the thief of joy. I can't remember who said that, but I love that. That's a great quote. It's a fantastic quote. The other 5 elements of this is we got to treat this like a long Sunday run. And the only way you know what a long Sunday run is by actually doing long Sunday runs. As we were telling Jamie before, hydration and electrolytes, without question. They're going to be important for replenishing your body with what it needs, with the right salts, with the right hydration. If it's a question of potassium, make sure you're eating bananas or any sort of potassium supplement. Carb load doesn't mean eating all the pizza. You want to be eating the smart carbs before a race. After the race, celebrate, do whatever you want. But before the race, you want to be eating smart. You definitely want to get the right nutrients. You want to get the right macros, and you definitely want to have carbs. But you want to make sure that you're eating the right kind of carbs to help facilitate your performance. Recovery is key, as we mentioned before. Foam rollers, stretching massages are very important. And the most important thing is we got to enjoy this moment. I wasn't able to run a marathon ever before in my life. Certainly not in 2019 and any time before that. The most important thing I'm going to do on October 2nd and the time before that and the time after that is I'm going to enjoy that moment. I'm going to enjoy running that race, but I'm also going to be enjoying spending time with some really dear friends and trying to accomplish a major milestone, something that I never thought was possible. And within the next 31 days, it's going to happen. It's going to happen for sure. Here is what the marathon looks like. And again, I apologize for the text on the left-hand side. I will read what I have up there. If you're interested in the race itself, portlandmarathon.com. I get a couple of questions from some viewers about whether or not this race is going to be broadcasted. I don't know if it is. The best place to look is portlandmarathon.com. Keep an eye on it. I'm sure someone will be putting a stream of it somewhere. Beginning at 6:40 in the morning on October 2nd, all of us will line up in the start chute on NATO Parkway. We will line up north of Salmon Street, the faster groups closer to Salmon Street, the slower groups towards Morrison. So I'll be closer to Morrison for sure. Both races, the half marathon and the marathon, will begin en masse at 7:10 a.m. Pacific time. That's 10 a.m. Eastern, or 10:10 a.m. Eastern, 7:10 Pacific. No waves, no fixed corrals. We'll be in our start chutes based on pacing. In my case, I'll be joining the 15-minute mile, 14-minute mile folks, and not the 8s or 7s. They'll be closer to where they are on Salmon Street. The start line is located near the World Trade Center Skybridge above Salmon Street, and at a 15-minute per mile pace, I should be done by 3:45, 4 o'clock p.m. Pacific time, if everything works correctly. As mentioned before, there is a 7-hour time limit. If at any point someone is behind the 7-hour pace, they will give us an escort to the finish line and say, hey, good job, next year you'll get it, so on and so forth. So there is pacing, there is timing. The other interesting thing about this race is there's a change of course come the 11 o'clock hour, 11 o'clock Pacific, in the sense that they can only get the train shut down until 11 o'clock. There is an Amtrak line that runs through there. So 11 o'clock onward, the course is going to actually change a little bit, but it will be the same distance and everything. So something to take into consideration. Hang on one second. I should have got water or something for this. But yes, that's the difference. At 11 o'clock, there'll be a deviation, and needless to say, we will have a different finish than those that are gunning it, that are doing 9-minute miles, 10-minute miles, whatnot. Nevertheless, it's an exciting course. It goes through the Rose Garden. It goes through many different elements of Portland and the surrounding area. It goes by some of my favorite places. It goes by the Insanium. It goes by Salted and Straw, one of my favorite ice cream places. It's going to be an incredible morning and afternoon without question. Looking forward to it. If you go to portlandmarathon.com, by the way, there is a parking guide. You can see a picture of it in a slide. There's also other information on where you can go to route the runners on, like myself. Be looking forward to seeing all of you in the area rooting me on, rooting everybody on, because it's going to be an incredible day for sure. Some comments before I get to a poem I wrote today. Jamie says, hope it is a great one. I feel in my heart of hearts it is going to be a great one for sure. I'm looking forward to this, and maybe talking about it may have taken some of the fear away. And Jamie says, this is Oregon. Yes, this is Oregon for sure. This is not Portland, Maine, Portland, Oregon. Yeah, definitely looking forward to this. I think we're close to the Columbia River too, which if there's anything I loved about my trip to Portland last year was going up and down to Portland, going up and down the Columbia River. It is absolutely amazing. So there'll be some of that too. Nevertheless, in the realization that today is September 1st, in the realization that I am 31 days away from my first marathon, I decided to do something I used to do all the time. I wrote a poem, and I want to share it with all of you. This poem's called A Distance in Our Mind. 13.1 or 26.2. Distance is but one measure. The mind is our governor. Thoughts to ponder and treasure. 480 or 180. Await big or small. Thoughts down in the doldrums or standing very tall. It begins in our mind. For all we know is certain is now. The past is done with a future unsure. It's now that matters, no matter whom, when, where, why, or how. What matters is indeed now. We cannot look at the past. We learn from it. We don't dwell. Tomorrow's no guarantee. What we have is right now. And as we get closer and closer to October 2nd, I'm going to get closer and closer to running 26.2 miles in Portland. So, that said, let's talk about what's coming up. Next Tuesday, we're going to talk about codependency again, but we're going to talk about with respect to something called stoicism. Let's take a look at that for a second. Stoicism is the endurance of pain or hardship without the display of feelings and without complaint. That's from Webster Dictionary. The Stoics elaborated a detailed taxonomy of virtue, dividing virtue into four main types: wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation. The funny thing is, there is a tie-in between this rigid mindset and something we've discussed before on this show: codependency. On Tuesday, we're going to talk about how the two are related. We're going to talk about how the two run into each other. We're going to talk about the good qualities of Stoics, but we're also going to talk about the codependent nature of Stoics, and also what they might be trying to avoid maybe too much on the other side from codependent relations. So Tuesday night, we're going to talk about codependency and Stoicism. But tomorrow night, we're going to do what we normally do. Have a conversation about anything and everything with Matt Haas, Paul Burke, and all of you. Because Friday nights are definitely something I look forward to. The conversations, as one person said last week, can definitely be a wild card. But it is always a good time, and it's always good to spend it with all of you. Some final comments. Rich joining us from across the pond that says, hey guys, hey Rich, hope you're doing well this morning. And I hope you're doing well for sure. So remember, VF Talks tomorrow night, 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific. And then the next episode of Venture on Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, when we talk about codependency and Stoicism. But until next time, I'm going to say the same thing I say at the end of every Venture Forward in VF Talks. Stay safe, stay sane, stay strong, stay sober. You're worth it. Have a wonderful night. I'll see you tomorrow night at 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific for VF Talks. Have a wonderful night. I love you all, and fly, be free.